Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 128. Finally. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be going over the 128th team, and I've had this team planned since the very beginning. I knew what exactly idea this team was going to be, because I knew that every 32 teams we were going to have a special team with a strategy that absolutely does not work, but you get it with one person out of like 50 tries, and you're satisfied for the rest of the day. That's just how it is. And this strategy is the strategy to all strategies that it should be forbidden. This strategy is so strong that once you get a good matchup into it, you will ruin that person's day. And the strategy that I am talking about is infinite pickup flinch. The basis of how the strategy works is that you use the move Fling, which will cause you to throw the item, and obviously power varies, but the actual damage of the move does not matter. It's the fact that whenever you fling specific items, Fling will have secondary effects, like if you fling a Flame Orb, it will burn, if you fling a Life Orb, it'll paralyze, and if you fling a King's Rock, or if you fling a Razor Fang, it will cause the opponent to flinch. So in a way, it's kind of like a second fake out, but you can choose to use it whenever you want, and it's not priority. That is the general kind of trade-off with using Fling and King's Rock. However, Fling has an interesting interaction with the ability Pickup. And what Pickup does is that you pick up an item from the field if you did not previously use it on the turn. So follow me a little bit carefully here, but in doubles, if you have two Pokemon with both the ability Pickup and the ability to use the move Fling, and a King's Rock and a Razor Fang, and both of those Pokemon are faster than the opponent's Pokemon, you have set up a scenario where they cannot hit you for 16 turns because you will flinch them every single time. You know, given that they don't have priority, have set up a substitute beforehand, have any form of speed control like Prankster Tailwind. Oh, I guess that's also priority and what that counts for. But like, how often is that going to happen? Okay, pretty often. But that is what this team is set out to do. It is set to set up infinite pickup flinch against your opponent, and then win that way. And this is an all or nothing strategy. Either your opponent has something to beat the strategy or they don't. But to start talking about the actual Pokemon, we have Ambipom, and I think this is the first time where I'm just going to talk about two Pokemon at the exact same time. We also have Dedenne, who are obviously our pickup Fling Mons, holding their King's Rock and their Razor Fangs. And Ambipom is here to add a fake out for a little bit of support for our other Mons, who make it so that we can increase the damage that we deal during the infinite pickup flinch in order to make it so that we can actually KO our opponents in that time frame, or make it easier to set up the infinite pickup flinch. But Ambipom is going to be helping out the team itself with Taunt, which means that if we can't fake out and we fling away our item, then Ambipom can't do any damage to anything, so we gotta be very careful with Ambipom. Might be worth trading fake out for an actual, like, normal type attacking move, but I'm not gonna go that far. You can do that if you decide to run this. And Dedenne working in very much the same way, except Dedenne has a little bit of speed control itself in the Electro Web, and we can actually use the Razor Fang, and that we get like a 10% chances if we hit both Electro Webs into the opponent, as well as lowering their speed, can come up sometimes, but we also have the Super Fang for cutting the opponent's health in half, which helps get closer to that Fling KO that we want to get by the time that we've used all 16 of our Flings. And Ambipom is Ghost, so that we can dodge a crucial fake out in the times that we need to, or so that we can be immune to extreme speed. A pretty notable priority move, Entadene, is Terra Grass, so that we can ignore the Rage Powder redirection and get our Fling into the side Pokemon that's being protected by the Rage Powder redirection. And then both Ambipom and Dedenne have the Protect, just so that if we get off a form of passive damage, we can do Fling Protect, Fling Protect, Fling Protect, and then that doubles the amount of turn that we get to inflict passive damage on the opponent. Up next, we have Glimmora, and Glimmora is here in order to try and poison the opponent, as poison is going to tick down while they're in the infinite pickup flinch, and it just helps speed things up quite a bit. It also helps beat some of the notable priority in the Rillaboom, who I don't know if you've heard that Pokemon, but it's pretty good. We at least have the poison-type Sludge Bomb in order to hit into that, and there's also this Pokemon you may have heard of called Incineroar, who clicks Fake Out into us. Yeah, we also have the Power Gem for doing super effective damage into that, and then the Mortal Spin is so that we can poison both targets and our Toxic Debris mixes, so that we can set up the Toxic Spikes on the field, so that once we poison the opponent, get knocked out, hopefully by a physical attack, that the entire team will be poisoned, making our chances of getting the infinite pickup flinch to KO our opponent much more likely with all the poison passive damage. And we just have the Rock Tomb just in case we need a little bit of speed control. Doesn't hurt to have it on this team, where outspeeding the opponent is very, very important with our pickup flinch bonds. And then I did go Terra Rock for damage, but I think a defensive Terra would make just as much sense here on Glimmora to maybe try and dodge some of the important ground-type moves. And Choice Scarf, obviously, on Glimmora, just so that we are making sure we get off our one very important move with Glimmora. Next up, we have Talonflame, and Talonflame is going to be adding the fact that we're using a team based around not having our items. I mean, it's Pickup Flinch, but the title of the video is obviously going to be like, how many items do you need to actually win? You need items on like every single Pokemon ever, except if your name is Talonflame. And that is because Talonflame obviously has the ability Gale Wings, which will give us priority on all of our flying type moves, and we have a really strong no drawback flying type move called Acrobatics, which will be 110 base power because we are not holding an item, which I guess not having an item is actually a drawback of Acrobatics, but forget I said that. And then also to try and help us deal with the priority that obviously beats us, we have the Quick Guard on Talonflame to maybe try and stop a Fake Out or an Extreme Speed that would otherwise hurt us very, very much. We can try and KO those Pokemon that directly counter us. And we also have the Will-O-Wisp in order to add another way to passive damage Pokemon. Here we got Rabombi, and the main reason that I added Rabombi onto the team was for the sticky web that we could set up into the opponent, as if we get the pickup flinch and we are able to KO two Pokemon on the field somehow, some way, and two more Pokemon who would be faster than our pickup flinch come in, we can use the sticky web in order to speed drop them. And then we also have the switcheroo on Rabombi that we can use in order to trade an item like a citrus berry that will mess with our pickup strategy, because if the opponent uses a consumable item while we are in the pickup flinch, it will be added into the item pool, and one of the pickup Pokemon will pick up the consumable item, and we will lose the King's Rock or the Razor Fang, which means that we have now exited the infinite pickup flinch, and that is really unsatisfying. Really, that sucks. So if we switch the safety goggles onto a Pokemon, then they'll always have an item that cannot be consumed. But we could also switcheroo it onto something like maybe Glimmora, Talonflame, or Gothitelle that need to dodge a powder move. Or if we need to get the Choice Scarf off of Glimmora, then we can do that too. And then we just have two good damaging moves in our Moonblast and our Bug Buzz, and we are the Shield Dust ability so that we will not be affected by the secondary effects of move. The big one being Fake Out. We don't want to be hit by the Fake Out when we're trying to get set up here with our Rabombi. And lastly on the team, I decided to slot on the Gothitelle, mostly so that we have like a tiniest bit of a way to find our way through Trick Room, because Gothitelle can afford to be really slow, but it can also trap Pokemon on the field that would maybe want to switch into a Trick Room instead of setting up with like a fast mon that leaves and then bringing in a slow mon. Gothitelle helps the tiniest bit, and then also helps trap in other threats like the Rillaboom that wants to deal the Grassy Glide into our Infinite Pickup Flinch. We can trap that on the field pretty easily. And Gothitelle itself is going to be using the Psychic Noise in order to try and prevent the target from healing for a bit of time, at least 2 turns, which is pretty nice. Fake Out in order to help us buy an extra turn. Helping Hand in order to increase the damage of one of our Pokemon, and Protect just to try and save ourselves for a turn. Leftovers in order to give us some prolonged health in case we get to a point where there's a Pokemon on the opposite side of the field that can't really damage us for whatever reason, whether we've burned them with Talonflame or something along those lines, and Gothitelle just needs those extra turns, but also doesn't want to hold a consumable item like a Citrus Berry. Then Leftovers is going to be what Gothitelle holds. And normally this is the part where I say, let's get into some battles, but because this is the last team, we are going to do something a little different here, where we are going to be doing battle replays, but you won't know when we actually succeed with the strategy, because I have a good number of replays here, and I'm going to add something onto the end of the video that makes it impossible to tell when the strategy actually succeeds. So you're going to be teetering on the edge, just like I was for the past about 2.5 hours, trying to see if I could get this strategy to work. Alright, so first up we have a Fire Water Grass team with Goldengo and maybe the Trick Room in the Farigiraf, but the most notable things that can counter us is the fact that Kilowattrel can be faster than Ambipom, who is our fastest pickup flincher, and obviously Rillaboom and Arcanine can have their priorities in their Grassy Glide and Extreme Speed, and Kilowattrel can set Tailwind as well. So the game starts out and we lead Glamora and Talonflame into Farigiraf and Rillaboom onto the field, and we quick guard with Talonflame so that we can get off the Mortal Spin there, but based on the fact that we didn't catch a Fake Out, Rillaboom actually just goes for the U-turn as Psychic KOs Glamora, a little tad bit unfortunate. But now that Talonflame has been damaged, its acrobatics will no longer be a priority move. We need to save Dedenne here so that we can get off the pickup flinch. Make It Rain does not KO Talonflame here, and Psychic tries to KO Dedenne, but if Dedenne can hold on for one more turn, then we'd be good. We got the Citrus Berry out of the way on that turn. Acrobatics plus Electro Web comes out, and Electro Web flinches Goldengo because of the King's Rock, and Psychic KOs the Talonflame there. So now we have Dedenne and Ambipom on the field together against 2 Pokemon that don't have priority, and we use our double fling in order to double flinch the opponent. And then, everybody takes Grassy Terrain Recovery. Farigiraf dies to the poison, and both Pokemon pick up the different items from what they had before. Arcanine is revealed in the back, and we double protect here just to stall out a turn of Grassy Terrain, but also I wanted to see if they had the Extreme Speed, as Goldengo goes for the Nasty Plot. Here we go for the fling. Ambipom attacks into the faster Pokemon. Dedenne attacks into the slower Pokemon, and the Infinite Flinch, and Goldengo has leftovers, so we're not super likely to beat Goldengo at this point. Rillaboom returns to the field. It is poisoned, so there's at least a little bit of a chance. It does reset up the Grassy Terrain, but the poison does more damage to the Rillaboom than the Grassy Terrain does. Goldengo decides to Terastallize into the Dragon type here, losing its weakness to the strategy, and Rillaboom goes for the Wood Hammer for whatever reason. I'm not exactly sure why, but it does decide to reveal the Grassy Glide here into Dedenne, so we fling into that Rillaboom, and we fling into Goldengo, and at least Goldengo flinches there. Rillaboom continues to take the toxic poison. Both Pokemon pick up their items again. Ambipom and Dedenne trying to use the grassy terrain to heal, while Rillaboom also dies. Slash also trying to stall out the grassy terrain is a very real thing that you can try to do with this team with the Protect, because once Rillaboom runs out of grassy terrain, it no longer has the priority. Dedenne gets to use that Terra Grass in order to live the turn, and Fling is, it's not doing too much damage, but Rillaboom is now down to half, and it is out of grassy terrain. But Rillaboom is going to leave the field for Arcanine to return as we get Fling into Goldango and Fling into Arcanine yet again. And Arcanine didn't show that it had Extreme Speed last time, so it is still possible. Now, Extreme Speed Arcanine to Dene goes down. And, yeah, Goldango is just going to click Make It Rain here, and that's going to be the end of that. So we did pull off the strategy there, but it did not end up cleaning the game, probably like we would have liked it to have. Alright, here we have a Rain team, but they don't seem to have any of the traditional Rain mons. They do have Dragonite, which can maybe have Hurricane, and they do have the Cloyster, which is at least a Water type, but that doesn't tend to run Water type moves, I don't think. Like, maybe Liquidation might have, but it tends to want the Skill Link moves for after it goes for Shell Smash. Well, we start the game with Talonflame and Ribombee this time, as we see Incineroar and Pelipper hit the field from the opponent. Talonflame's going to protect here as Fake Out comes out into it, and Moonblast gets some chip on the Incineroar, as Weather Ball also tries to hit Talonflame but does not. Pelipper decides to protect it here, which is pretty nice. We try to Will-O-Wisp into it in order to get some passive damage on it. They knock off Ribombee for whatever reason here, which does get rid of our safety goggles, but that's not too important right now. We Acrobatics and Moonblast into Incineroar in order to get rid of it, as Pelipper decides to Hurricane in order to get rid of Ribombee. Now we can bring Dedenne on the field, and the opponent has Cloyster. Pelipper protects again, probably not wanting to catch an Electric-type move, but we get passive damage into Cloyster here, and we get the Electro Web with Dedenne, which Cloyster has no special defense, so the Electro Web does a pretty good chunk of damage. And Talonflame is still at full health, so we can just protect Dedenne here and click Acrobatics into Cloyster, and it does not KO Cloyster, but it does do enough that it will die at the end of the turn to its burn. And now there's only 2 Pokemon left, so Pelipper no longer has the benefit of the Rain. The last Pokemon is Dragonite, who can be Inner Focus, and I test the waters here by just clicking Fake Out into the Dragonite, hoping that it is multi-scale. We also do get the Electro Web damage into Dragonite there, which might have been better to try and get the Super Fang damage, but I was also hoping that I could deal a lot of damage to Pelipper there, and then maybe try and get a 2-hit KO with the Electro Web if Dragonite couldn't get off a KO into either of these Pokemon. But that was not the case, as we go for the Fling here with each of our Pokemon. And Dragonite has not yet gone for the Extreme Speed, which maybe means that it doesn't have it. Could be very possible that it doesn't have the Extreme Speed, is what I'm hoping in the back of my mind. Fling doing some half-decent damage. The thing is, like, Dragonite will die eventually. Like, Ambipom is doing good chip into it with the Fling, but unfortunately Dragonite has found the Extreme Speed button, and it does use it into Ambipom, who is a ghost, but if they figure out that they can use it into Dedenne in order to hurt Dedenne, then Dedenne is going to be kind of cooked. We can also use the Protect in order to try and stall out the Extreme Speed, which would be a little bit better of a strategy if we were not currently on Pokemon Showdown. If we were on Cart where we only had 5 Extreme Speeds, then we would be in a slightly better spot. Dedenne can take 3 Extreme Speeds from the way that it looks, but our continued use of Protect is happening. We do Fling into Dragonite there, and then Electro Web in order to hope that Dedenne can KO Dragonite with the Electro Web, but we don't get it, and yeah, now we're kind of stuck. We Protect again to maybe hope that Dragonite, we can stall out its Extreme Speed by hoping that it makes a mistake, or double protecting, but that is in fact not the case, as Dragonite Extreme Speeds into Dedenne, taking it out, and Pelipper takes out Ambipom with the Hurricane. Here we have a Snow Electric Terrain team, which I feel like is the first time we've seen one of these like ever, so, you know, applause for that. This team starts out with Pincurchin and Magnezone, as we start out with Glimmora and the Gothitelle. So we trap the opponent on the field and we fake out into them as Pincurchin goes for Sucker Punch into the Gothitelle slot, but Glimmora is able to get off the poison into Pincurchin, who reveals that it's actually eject button into Palafin, so we also get to poison the Palafin, kinda hoping that Palafin will flip turn into Glimmora here, which it does, so we get Toxic Debris to poison their last Pokemon as Pincurchin returns to the field. We Psychic Noise into Pincurchin, which is gonna do some chip to it, and Magnezone reveals that it is Discharge, but it also seems to be maybe Specs Discharge. It did do a lot. It might also just be Analytic. But we get Fake Out into it there, and Sucker Punch is not enough to KO the Gothitelle, as Pincurchin is going to die to the poison here. Palafin returns to the field, and we need to hope that Palafin doesn't figure out that it has the Jet Punch button, and the fact that Wave Crash is highly indicative that it maybe doesn't, but that doesn't matter here because Magnezone yet again goes for the Discharge, which is going to KO Gothitelle, and Palafin goes down. So now we have the 2v2 endgame that we need, and it is Ambipom and Dedenne versus a poisoned Incineroar and Magnezone. So all we need to do is do enough passive damage to the Magnezone with Fling, and Incineroar will probably go down to the poison. But it all rides on this next turn because I protected with Ambipom, but Ambipom is Terra Ghost, so it either needs to live, or we could just try double flinging and Terra Ghost and hope that Fake Out goes into the Ambipom since it protected on the previous turn. Nope, Fake Out goes into Dedenne. We get the fling into Magnezone there. Magnezone flinches, but now we can't pull off the strategy because we're one item down, and Ambipom can't do anything this turn at least. We fling into Magnezone, but Incineroar decides to go for its Terrifier, which is going to KO Dedenne. And we miss getting off the strategy yet again. Alright, here we have a team with a pretty wide spread of Mons. They do have that Arcanine with the extreme speed, but it's also pretty likely that Metagross has the Bullet Punch, or that the Breloom could have Mach Punch, which would both ruin our strategies, and then Kilowattrel, of course, again, being fast enough to go for the Tailwind, maybe can mess with us. But here the battle starts, and they lead Arcanine and Hydreigon, and we lead Glimmora and Ribombee. And we get a great turn, because Power Gem is able to KO Arcanine, and Moonblast is able to KO Hydreigon. So now there's just two Pokemon in the back, and we just need to have these two mons do whatever they can to get off damage. Power Gem does a lot to Kilowattrel. Kilowattrel gets off the Tailwind, and we Moonblast into Kilowattrel, Ribombee still being faster than Ursaluna. We do get crit on Ribombee, but that probably doesn't matter too much, as now we get to bring in Ambipom, who gets a free Fake Out, and we get a free Power Gem into the Ursaluna, and we Power Gem again, because I was thinking that they would go for Earth Power into Glimmora, and then, you know, Ambipom would be free on this turn, and then on the next turn there would only be one Tailwind turn left, so that we could protect with Ambipom and protect with Dedenne on the field, and then we would win using the strategy, because they could both fling into Ursaluna and double flinch it, and then that would be a win using the strategy. No, we taunt into Ursaluna, and it clicks Blood Moon into Ambipom, reading it as the threat. So, yeah, they can't kill both Pokemon here with Hyper Voice. I just protected with Dedenne, mostly because it was kind of over at that point. Glimmora is, you know, fast enough to pick up the Power Gem KO into their Ursaluna, so we were close to getting the strategy off, and we would have won using the strategy, even though the first two Pokemon definitely did like 75% of the work in KOing the first three Pokemon. But yet again, we missed using the strategy, so on to the next one. Alright, here the opponent seems to have double fish with Rain, and one of these Pokemon being a Swift Swim Pokemon, and I think we pretty much immediately lose to Swift Swim Basculin most of the time. Like, we gotta get kind of lucky with Talonflame and maybe Gothitelle, depending on what happens. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention this as a weakness of Pickup Flinch, but obviously, if there is a Follow Me Pokemon on the field, we can't use Dedenne's Terra Grass in order to ignore the redirection, because Follow Me is stronger than Rage Powder, and the fact that Rage Powder is a powder move, and Follow Me is not. But here we start the battle with Rabombi and Gothitelle trying to trap something in. And we do get to trap in some pretty good Pokemon here. They fake out into Rabombi, not knowing that it could be Shield Dust, as we fake out into their Veluza, and we get up our Sticky Web with Rabombi. We Helping Hand into Rabombi, and that gives us the Bug Buzz into Veluza for a good KO as the parting shot in order to get Incineroar out there. Probably wanting to refresh their fake out if I had to guess, but it means that both Pokemon on the field now take the Sticky Web. Basculegion being very notable there, as maybe without the rain it's no longer faster than Ambipom. We'll see, we'll see. They fake out again into Rabombi, not understanding that they're kind of wasting their time, but they tried Last Respecting into Gothitelle, which means that we can Helping Hand and then Moonblast into Basculegion to KO the first two Mons, as Incineroar is going to Parting Shot out again. And we don't get to the point where we would have won using the infinite pickup Flinch, because Incineroar will be forced to come back onto the field, use its fake out, and then it would be out of the priority move. And even if they had Indeedee in the back, Rabombi would have done a lot of damage to Indeedee using the Bug Buzz. And then even if Incineroar could and probably would take down the Rabombi with a Flare Blitz and Gothitelle with a knockoff, we would just bring in our infinite pickup Flinch Mons and win. But the opponent deprived us of that, so on to the next one. Alright, here we have what looks to be a Kamo-O setup team with maybe a little bit of Trick Room in the last three Mons. But obviously they have the redirection in the Sinistcha and the Rillaboom, who is a big Pokemon in our strategy that we don't like to see. But here the opponent starts with Kamo and Rabombi, as we start with Talonflame and Glimmora. Talonflame immediately goes for that Terra Flying in order to try and get rid of the Rabombi, but we follow up with the Mortal Spin, and that's going to take it down, and we get a pretty crucial poison on Kamo there. Kamo gets off the Clangorous and takes some Poison Chip, but Sinistcha comes back in order to give it the Hospitality. And here I protect Talonflame because I thought they would simply just redirect, and I kind of wanted them to try and go for the Clanging Scales, so that way it would decrease the defense on Kamo. But I think this turn would have been better used just trying to get the flying type damage into Sinistcha so that we can get rid of one of the redirectors a little bit faster. But Sinistcha does Rage Powder redirect there, and we get the poison off. But Kamo Terra Steeled, and that's actually eject button on that Pokemon, so not great. And Kamo is also Substitute, which Substitute is a thing that directly beats our Infinite Flinch, because we can't flinch a Pokemon that's behind a Substitute. So we have a bit of an uphill battle, but I'm still favorable. They do fake out immediately into Talonflame, which makes me wish that I had Quick Guarded, but the Quick Guard isn't going to block what comes next, in the fact that, actually I think this is a turn where Kamo, it goes for the Clangristle. So if I had Quick Guarded in order to keep our full health, then we would be in a slightly better slot with Talonflame, because then Talonflame could whip out a priority move into the Rillaboom here, and here I swap into Dene because it is a fairy type and would not be hurt by the Clanging Scales, hoping that Rillaboom would go for like a U-turn into the Sinistcha. Clanging Scales is going to KO Talonflame here, but the Rillaboom actually decides to go for High Horsepower, which causes the Dene to die, and at this point it's pretty cooked. The opponent swaps in Sinistcha here just to heal up Kamo that little bit more. Fake out doesn't do anything there. Kamo obliterates us and, goes for that Clanging Scales, which would have lowered its defense stat enough for us to maybe hurt it if it wasn't hiding behind a Substitute and had a 2x speed boost, which means that it could be faster than both our pickup Flinch Mons. But, didn't win this one either. Now here we have a rain team where they have the Basculegion, Palper, and Archelodon, but they also have some interesting elements in the Primeape instead of an Annihilape, and the Chandelure, which you usually don't get to see on rain teams. And they also have the Meowscarada, who is pretty fast, faster than Ambipom in fact, at max speed. The game starts out and they lead Primeape and the Basculegion here, as we lead Glimmora and Talonflame. And we immediately Terra Flying on Talonflame, and that is able to KO the Primeape, and we get some Mortal Spin damage onto Basculegion. Legion. Basket Legion is going to flip turn out into the Archelodon, though, and we're going to see Meowscarada come, so they didn't actually bring the brain. We had good Mortal Spin damage into Meowscarada, and I tried to Will-O-Wisp into Archelodon so that we can start maybe getting some passive damage into it, but Meowscarada reveals that it's actually side Bullet Seed into Archelodon, and Archelodon's going to get some defense boost. It only gets 2 because the Meowscarada is not loaded dice, which means that Glamora survives the body press, which is maybe not what we wanted. Mortal Spin comes out again, does some more chip into Meowscarada, but now we have that burn on Archelodon, which is also going to decrease the damage of the body press. This time Archelodon gets up to 3.5 times defense, but is not quite enough to KO Talonflame, thankfully. Talonflame lives on just a bit. Here we swap into Dene to maybe take some damage from a body press, but instead takes a Snarl, which is able to take down Talonflame. Now we get to bring Glamora back onto the field, and Dene protects, and we get the Rock Tomb into Basket Legion, and I was hoping that Basket Legion would try to KO Glamora here so that we can get up the pickup Flinch going, especially now that we have the Rock Tomb into Basket Legion, lowering its speed, and it doesn't seem like it might be Scarf or Band on this side of the field, so it won't be clicking Aqua Jet anytime soon is what I was hoping. But we see the Snarl actually misses Glamora, which wouldn't have KO'd it, but more damage on Glamora in order to get rid of it is helpful here. We swap into Ambipom and we get some more Rock Tomb damage into Basket Legion to continue to chip it. And since Ambipom is a normal type, I try to catch the Last Respects, and thankfully we do catch Last Respects there. We protect Ambipom again, foregoing the Fake Out just to get that little bit more Rock Tomb damage onto Basket Legion as Body Press comes out into Ambipom, and Last Respects is able to KO Glamora. This sets up the second layer of Toxic Spikes, but that doesn't matter. It never mattered at this point. And now we can bring into Dene and Ambipom, and we can fling into Basket Legion, and we can fling into Archelodon. And if you guessed that this was the one where the strategy gets to work, you were correct. Play the Price is Right music. Da 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 da. Yeah, we just keep. I mean, Archelodon is at 4 times defense, so it's pretty unbreakable here with the fling, but it can't move at all. So it is now in purgatory where the burn and theoretically maybe a crit fling will take it out, but at time's going to be a while away. But the opponent realizes that they cannot win the battle, and thankfully we finally get a win using Infinite Pickup Flinch. Alright, and that was the Infinite Pickup Flinch team. And what a team to end on. I mean, it had everything. It had the flinching, it had the picking up of items, it had the flinging the items. What more could you ask for? But also, I think this team really is the best team to end the series because it is not a good team by any means. The strategy is entirely defeatable as long as you use basic double strategies. But you did learn something. You gotta admit. Like, who else is gonna tell you about Infinite Pickup Flinch like I tell you about Infinite Pickup Flinch? And that is by losing my mind a little bit in the process. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and if you watched all 128 teams, I sure hope that your head is full of amazing ideas about this amazing game that we play called Pokemon Competitive Battles. Also going to tack on that I'm going to make a video after this video at some point, probably within the next week or so. Maybe I should stop making promises that I couldn't keep. But I'm going to strive to at least get out a video relatively soon going over every single Pokemon that I did not put on a 128 teams team, why I didn't put that Pokemon on, and any strategies that I may have left out. I'm pretty sure I got through every single strategy that I wanted to get through. It's just that there might be some slight variations to strategies that I didn't get to entirely go over with specific abilities, but we'll get there when we get there. And as always, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Also, Team Bracket. We got to fight them all together. That'll be coming up next. Bye for real this time.